Have you ever dreamed about starting over abroad? So, in a new country, a new career, or in a life that you truly want? I've packed up my life 5 times and I've rebuilt it on 4 different continents. And every time I moved abroad, the same pattern kept repeating itself. And that pattern completely changed the way I viewed starting over. And it can help you begin your fresh start with courage and clarity. And yes, the idea of starting over abroad, moving abroad, sounds really exciting, but it also feels absolutely terrifying. What if I fail? Or what if I don't belong? Or what if I don't make it work? Like, Diedre girl, you are over 35. Yes, you're child free, but what if you fail? Can you start over at this time? I want to remind you that you don't have to have everything figured out, because starting over, it isn't about perfection. It's about movement and putting things into action, taking that first step. And I learned that the hard way, or I learned that really firsthand through 5 very different moves. The first move I want to talk about is the first move. So I first moved to the south of France, in Toulouse, and I was young, I was clueless, full of adventure. It was the first sleep, and I really didn't know what I was doing at all. Things were chaotic, and everything was like big adventure, full of life kind of life. And I made so many mistakes. But the lesson for me in that first big move really taught me that courage isn't confidence, right? Courage is, it's in the action. Courage is in the action of making the move abroad, starting your life abroad, even though you're not sure what you're doing, you don't have all the pieces figured out. But that first step, that big leap, is the courage that you need and the courage that you should use. Because if you're waiting to feel ready, you'll wait kind of like forever. India. India was a big spiritual mess. India was a big mess. Things did not work out the way I had planned. I loved India. It was such an enriching move for me, but it did not go to plan at all. Nothing worked the way it wanted. I gained really great friendships, really strong memories. But I moved to India for an internship, and I realized in the middle of it that it was really not the job that I wanted, and I had to come to terms with calling it quits. The growth that led me to that realization that, this isn't really kind of like what you want, and that I was not aligned with the internship and where I thought I wanted my life to go. I moved from France to India because I had such a really great plan for my career, and nothing went well, and it was so messy. But sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when it's time to pivot. And that move to India for me was definitely understanding that you have to call it quits and you have to pivot through your life. The funny thing is, I had so many moves while I moved, or when I moved to France. I made so many other moves abroad. And one poignant move for me was moving to Colombia. And this was after France. I call it my post-France era. But if India was messy, my move to Colombia was built in disruption. And I ended up moving to Colombia because of a job loss, and also my visa expired. Double whammy. So it ended up being a forced move. And my move to Colombia was possible because of the connections I made in India. And renewal is built in disruption. And even when you're going through growth, or when you feel like your life is messy, it doesn't mean that your plan has ended or the plan failed. It could be a stepping stone to the next chapter. And for me, Messy India was a stepping stone to my next chapter in Colombia, which was in itself its own big disruption because I had lost my job in France. My company went through a restructuring, long story short, and my visa was expiring around the same time, and I wasn't able to get another job in time, and so I was forced to leave. This complete disruption. I learned that renewal is built in disruption. Like something has to end before another thing can like begin. Many times it happens this way. And for you, sometimes life will push you before you're ready. But just understand that that's still part of the path. It's still part of the plan. Because had I not gone through that messy stage of India and understanding that it's time to pivot, then I wouldn't have made the connection to move to Colombia. Listen, fourth move. Disruption is the key to life, apparently. I want to talk about my pandemic move. Actually, this is like pre-pandemic. Is it? The fourth time I moved abroad to start over was I had just finished a big project, finished working on like a big transformational project in Jamaica. And I was ready. I think I was going through kind of like a burnout. And I was ready to step back into the travel industry. It's always something that I really, really liked. And I wanted to make my life and profession and career more international facing. And so I packed up yet again, I packed my bags and I moved abroad. And I was moving to Mexico to make that transition and to step into my new career in the travel space. And I had all my contracts, I had everything planned out, and I went to New York as the transition base. And when I was getting ready to move from New York to Mexico, the pandemic happened, and the world as we know it, the world as you knew it, we all know it, shut down. I was blocked in New York. I was stuck there. All my contracts disappeared over like a 3 to 4 week period. And life was completely derailed. I had to make multiple pivots. Pretty much that plan failed. What that really taught me though was that failure can be your fuel for redesign. Even when the plan like blows up, you're not starting from zero, you're starting from experience. So remember that disruption or what may seem like failure can be that fuel to redesign your life. From the multiple pivots of the pandemic, canceling plans to move to Mexico, being stuck in New York, and having to move back to Jamaica, those multiple pivots set the stage for me to really redesign what I thought starting over should look like or could look like. And that for me became a more intentional space. And it led to what I view as my most intentional move, and it's to where I am now, and that's moving back to France, but not to the south of France, to the north of France. And now I'm based in Paris. And this was such an intentional move. I had more perspective, more clarity. And after going through all of those different moves and disruptions, growth, renewals, redesigns, etc., I understood that renewal works best when it's designed with clarity and intention. I want to remind you that the fresh starts are the ones that you step into with clarity. I had different countries, different reasons, but every single time the same pattern was waiting for me. And to define it simply, I call it the renewal cycle. And there are 3 stages to the renewal cycle: disruption, growth, redesign. And so the first stage, disruption, here, nothing feels stable. Everything is in upheaval. Ooh, and I'm also in upheaval. You are trying to like figure out where to go. You're making fast decisions. Nothing is clear. And this is the first step of a renewal cycle and the first stage of starting over. But that leads into a growth. And the growth stage is the second step. And growth in the renewal cycle is an uncomfortable stretch. Like it expands and you're shifting because your perspectives are widening, you're learning new things, you're gathering like more information, more data about yourself and your new environment, and you're stretching and your worldview is expanding. And it's in this growth, that uncomfortable stretch, it's still layered with kind of like a sense of confusion, I would say. But it shows you that, you're going on the right path. And then the third step is redesign. This is the final stage of the renewal cycle. And with redesign, it's pretty straightforward. It's about building that life that fits for you and gaining more clarity to understanding what's more aligned for you and what works, what you need to keep and hold on to, and what you need to like, you know what, I don't need this, let's let it go. Those are the three steps of the renewal cycle: disruption, where nothing feels stable; growth, that uncomfortable stretch; and redesign, where you're building life with intention and clarity. But it isn't just a concept, and each of my moves showed me exactly how this cycle plays out. I want to give you three top lessons of the renewal cycle that you can use when you're starting over. And the first lesson is disruption isn't failure, and like I said, disruption is the first step of the renewal cycle, but it isn't failure, it's that reset. And if I look at my moves, what the pattern that always happens is when I'm moving abroad, everything is usually disruptive. Packing up, letting go, and the landing in itself, the arrival is disruptive. Not just because something is ending and a new thing is beginning, but you're also landing, especially if you're doing it abroad, you're landing in a new culture, sometimes a new language. And there's always a culture shock, and that in itself is disrupting. And trying to resettle that into your life and where you are emotionally and physically is that reset that you need, and you can use it to really reset how you live your life. And so, if you're planning a move abroad, disruption is guaranteed. Don't expect to avoid disruption, it's guaranteed. But don't mistake disruption for failure. It's the doorway, it leads you to the life that you want to build and to the life that you wanted when you moved abroad. Lesson two: growth feels uncomfortable. That's kind of like the sign that you're in it. And growth, when you're starting over abroad, can look like working through language struggles or rewriting your CV, especially if you're moving abroad for like a career move, rewriting your CV multiple times. For example, to find one of my first permanent jobs in France, I had to create 6 versions of my CV. So 3 different versions for 3 different industries that I wanted to tap into. And those 3 industries, I had to make one CV in English and one CV in French. And so I had to tweak 6 individual CVs just in order for me to be able to tap into the job market. The lessons that I learned and how I was able to grow and improve in my interviewing, in my job search, in understanding the professional landscape of France, which was the country I moved to, was really vital and so valuable. And so while the growth feels uncomfortable, it's a sign that you're in it. So whether you're going through language struggles, you have to rewrite a CV, or like making friends, understanding different social cues of how people interact in your new country. If you feel lost, it's growth and not stuckness. Like, don't mistake it that you're stuck because you feel lost. Understanding that you are going through a growth cycle, you're going through the growth stage of the renewal cycle. And the third lesson I want to leave with you is redesigning. It's that part where you can claim agency. It's that part where you're really the navigator of your life. And you can really shape and shift and shape shift the life that you want. And so I use like my current example of living in Paris. So remember, I had first moved to the south of France, and then now I'm in the north, more northern France, in Paris. And for me, life in Paris city is a bit too hectic, and it's a bit too busy. So like so many things to do, etc. But where I am now and how I wanted to live my life abroad at this moment was I wanted something a bit calmer. Having that clarity made me be able to intentionally design my life how I wanted, and that included coming to the decision that I needed to move outside of Paris city. And I moved to a calmer suburb outside of Paris, which was close enough for me to get in on action, but also I was in a calm, quieter space that was better for my needs and how I wanted my life. And the thing about life abroad or starting over abroad is that it forces you to redesign. And that's kind of like where the magic happens. You're able to really take like un bilan de vie, un bilan. Like you're really able to like take stock of your life and like what you want and what you don't want. And like, do I really need to do this? Who says that this is the way life needs to be organized or life needs to be lived? It really forces you to redesign what you want out of your life. And that for me is the magic of the renewal cycle. Looking back, it really wasn't about the countries. It was about who I became each time I started over. And I also understood that you can start over at any point in your life. It really doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter your age or your income or where you are in life. Some of the actions that you take will be different, of course, but the renewal cycle, you will go through the same shift no matter where you are. You will have a disruption and you will go through growth, and then you're able to end up in that redesign era, which is the final leg. So I want to know, like, which part of the renewal cycle are you in right now? Is it disruption? Is it the growth stage? Or are you in your redesign era? Like, drop it in the comments. I will read each one. Your story might give someone else the courage to begin. And if you have a question for me, drop it in the comments too. And I will either answer in the comments or I will make a video. I'll try to make a video to your question. But put your questions in the comments and let me know which part of the renewal cycle you are in right now. Because your first start is kind of like closer than you think. Merci!